Hello and welcome to this edition of HeadStart. I am Paranjoy Guha Thakurtha in the studio of Lok Sabha television here in New Delhi. India entered the new millennium with 1/3 of the world's computer software engineers and 1/4 of the world's poor and undernourished. Can India bridge that digital divide? Can information technology be used for the benefit of the poor and the underprivileged? This is the topic that we are going to discuss today. Let me welcome the guests who are with me in the studio. To my left, I have Mr. Shivanand Kanavi, theoretical physicist from the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, then studied in Boston, moved from a teaching and academic career to economic consultancy, then journalism, and then back to the corporate sector, currently Vice President, Special Projects, Tata Consultancy Services, a leading company of its kind in the country, and author of this recently published book, Sand to Silicon, The Amazing Story of Digital Technology. With us here is an old friend, Dinesh Sharma, also an author, also a journalist. He's a science editor of Mail Today newspaper, spent nearly 25 years in the profession, and has authored a book which is published 6 months ago called The Long Revolution, about the birth and growth of India's information technology industry, which was sponsored by the New India Foundation. Thank you so much, Dinesh, for coming here. Let me start by asking you the first set of questions. To what extent has information technology helped the poor and the underprivileged in this country? Once upon a time, there was a huge amount of opposition to computers. Bank employees were very, very unhappy that computers were going to make their life simpler. Touts who sold railway tickets were unhappy that computers would make them lose their jobs. If you can summarize, Shivanand, if you look at the recent past, how has information technology affected the life of the proverbial Aam Aadmi, the ordinary citizen of this country?
Yeah, to look at that, let's first look at certain basic features that information technology has. The first thing is that information technology has in certain areas increased human reach, human powers. We can go into that in which way and so on later. But second thing is it has helped in cooperative behavior, in collaborating with, sharing things with others, and quickly, communication and so on and so forth, which all goes into a cooperative network, what is called a network behavior. And third thing is, because it creates a direct channel, in a sense, of communication between various individuals, there is a sort of delayering, there is a sort of disintermediation.
Explain. What do you mean by delayering? What do you mean by disintermediation? These are big words, fancy sounding words. Explain in a language which ordinary people who are watching you, listening to you will be able to understand.
Right. It's somewhat, in a sense, very similar to what the Bhakti movement aimed to do, when it said that let there be direct communion with the God. Why do we need the go-betweens, the in-betweens who can act as gatekeepers? So in every transaction in society, with government or with various other individuals, there are so many middlemen who come in. Intermediaries. And these middlemen can not only add to the cost and the time for a transaction to take place, but also just make life very asymmetric and miserable. For example, a citizen.
From the priest in the temple to the person selling a railway ticket in the black market.
Absolutely, absolutely. And especially when you have a culture in India for several thousand years, at least going as far back as Chanakya, that the state is supposed to do so many things. It's part of its Raj Dharma to do so many things for the citizens. Now, if there are so many middlemen in those services, then the state becomes a highly oppressive instrument. Doesn't matter what the stated policy is. So if technology can help in removing those middlemen and making things move faster for citizens, then straight away everybody from poor to the middle classes to the business and the rich, everybody, the entire populace, a lot of things get smoothened out.
Okay, Dinesh, Shivanand's given us somewhat, I should say, a philosophical answer to the question which I asked. Maybe you can bring us down to earth and let's look at very, very concrete ways in which the life of the average person in this country has changed on account of information technology in the recent past.
You referred to the number of software engineers India produces and the number of poor people we have, and that is the divide. On one hand we have a generation which is a sort of a major user of all the digital devices, and on the other hand we have a whole lot of millions of people who have no access to them. But there has been some kind of even before this whole concept of digital divide and digital technology came in, India did certain experiments which have proved to be hugely successful, and two of them you referred to. One of them is the railway reservation, computerization of passenger railway reservation. That remains, to my knowledge, the largest application of information technology ever.
Of its kind anywhere in the world.
Of its kind anywhere in the world, even till today. Imagine see, it's not the question of somebody using a computer or somebody using a mobile phone, but in what way the technology is touching your life. That's the technology diffusion that has taken place. Today 17 million people travel by Indian Railways every day. So in a way,
today the railways are willing to reach that ticket to your home.
Yeah.
You can use your credit card and book a ticket if you have a good internet,
that's right.
An internet connection.
So it is touching the lives of 17 million people every day. Look at, all three of us belong to a generation where we had to stand in a long queue, one train, one window, and all kinds of things. You could not book reservation for onward journey or return journey. You had to send telegrams.
We used to spend half a day wanting to go back home. And it was an expedition.
So the amount of time somebody spent buying a railway ticket was almost equivalent to the amount of time he would travel by the train. So see the change from then to now. This process has started in 84, and in fact it continued till 1999. And 2005 it was all connected to the internet. So this remains the largest project, technology diffusion project of its kind ever till date. Imagine 6 billion people traveling by railway every year. So it is touching the lives of so many people, and as Shivanand said, it has cut down the transaction cost, it has cut down the transaction time, it has cut down the intermediaries. So other example is of course the banking. It used to take 6 days or even more than that for a local check to clear, 6 weeks for an outstation check to clear. So all that has changed. So all that has happened in the background. The citizens have been the users of this. This has been at the interface of the service and the citizen. So the technology has changed the way service is offered.
Let's focus a little bit on the use of information technology on banking. We moved a long distance from the days Dinesh is talking about, when it would take many weeks for an outstation check to be cleared, to a system where you not only have automatic teller machines. Today you can use any automatic teller machine, irrespective of whichever bank you have an account, to withdraw a certain amount of money, to internet banking, to real-time gross settlement systems, remittances, and so on and so forth. Take you back to the time the employees of banks, the unions, would be sitting on dharna. Their argument is that computers would make us lose our jobs, and even if we don't lose our jobs, the future generation would be deprived of jobs. Computers would remain covered in plastic packets in banks because employees refuse to use them. What really changed the mindset of employees who were so opposed to the use of computers in banking?
I think there are several things involved in it. First of all, you need the motivation in the top leadership to actually implement a program like that, and then communicate with the employees, first of all the stakeholders. So starting with the employees, the benefits of this to the bank, its business, because after all the employees have a stake in the growth of the business of the bank, its survival, its profitability, etc. And as well as in their own personal growth, and leave aside job security issues. That is of course the first thing you'll have to ensure that in India that no project has been done successfully without the implementer assuring the employees that their jobs are safe. But then there is something more than that. You are learning new skills. You are moving into a different level of skills and technology and ability to do many more things than what you used to do before.
Okay. Dinesh, do you agree with what Shivanand said, that it was basically a failure of the leadership, whether it be of banks or society in general, the union leaders, the employees associations, that one couldn't convince the average, say, bank employee that computerization is not only good for you, it is benefiting society as a whole. That mindset. Was it really an issue of the leadership unable to change those ingrained attitudes and mindsets, which I think today we have been largely successful in breaking down?
Yeah, in any new technology project or introduction of a new concept, you do need a champion, at the top, be it a political, leadership, be it a champion within an organization. So I certainly agree with him. I'll again go back to the railways and banking, the difference, why there was opposition in banking and why there was no opposition in the railways.
After all, railways are also a huge employer.
Of course. So the reason behind this is the decision to computerize banking operations was taken at a certain level, and the decision to and it was implemented in that way, whereas the decision to the process of computerizing railway reservation started with the involvement of the employees, because the process itself was so complex.
Difference.
There was 200 categories of tickets and umpteen number of coaches, and to understand that, the agency which was involved, CMC, had to sit and spend time with the railway clerks for hours together. That sort of made them sort of a partner in the whole process.
So you are, in a sense, you are endorsing what he said, that at the end of the day, it's if you involve those who are going to be using the technology, those who are going to be the beneficiaries of the technologies, unless you involve them in that entire process of implementation and planning, your project will bound to encounter hurdles. Am I correct?
Yeah,
if I've summarized both of you. All right, we have a lot to discuss. Let's take a break in our program. I get back to you, Dinesh. I get back to Shivanand. Let's discuss issues concerning services to citizens, e-governance. You talk about tenders, land records, birth certificates, death certificates, passports, registration of vehicles, and so on and so forth. Let's talk a little bit about the government's poverty alleviation schemes, National Rural Employment Guarantee Program, among other things, the Postal Department. We have a lot to discuss. I'll get back to both of you. People keep talking about India being this leader of information technology. But we live in a country where there are just less than 3 computers for every 100 Indians. In what way can computers change the lives of the ordinary Indian? That's our topic of discussion. We'll be back with you in a while.
फानुस बनके जिसकी हिफाजत हवा करे, वो शमा क्या बुझे जिसे रोशन खुदा करे। ये पहल है उनके नाम जिन्हें विश्वास है खुद पर, जिन्हें नाज है अपने सपनों पर, जिन्होंने अपनी तदबीर से अपनी तकदीर बदल दी। ऐसे ही मजबूत इरादों की दास्तां, हौसलों की उड़ान।
Welcome back to our discussion on how information technology is affecting the daily lives of ordinary Indians, and how it can improve the lives of ordinary Indians. With me here in the studio of Lok Sabha Television, I have Shivanand Kanavi. He is Vice President Special Projects of Tata Consultancy Services, and Dinesh Sharma, Science Editor, Mail Today newspaper. Shivanand, let's talk about specific instances. We agree that if we have a transparent system, that eliminates corruption. It removes the discretionary powers that a few have to manipulate the system, to milk the system, to obtain illegal rent-seeking behavior. Let's talk about the way in which services to citizens have improved thanks to information technology, and let's look at where it has improved, how it's improved. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the experience of, say, computerization of land records in some of the southern states, in particular Karnataka, I understand, is one of the states which has done very well in this regard.
Yes, but I'm not that familiar with that project, though I know some of the features of it. Probably I think Dinesh has studied it in much more depth. He can speak more about it. But I can tell you a little bit about, let's say, another project which is currently sweeping India and has been created as a sort of a safety net by the government for the rural poor, that is NREGS. And again, the whole question on rural development programs and poverty alleviation programs has been, what is the leakage, what is the corruption angle there, does it reach the right people, and does anything, are productive assets being created, and so on and so forth.
So how has computerization helped in the implementation of the National Rural Employment Guarantee Program?
Exactly. So to give one example of Andhra Pradesh, the Andhra Pradesh used a software, and one more thing I want to say something about these kinds of software projects or technology projects. See, there is no a package which is available, a ready-made solution to answer X, Y, Z requirement.
The human beings behind those,
human beings,
behind
procedures,
the machines,
the legacy issues, all these issues need to be dealt with. So it's not just not even automating what exists. So because what exists can also be highly anachronistic, because we have a colonial state machinery, its procedures, its rules, and so on and so forth. So it may not even be desirable sometimes to just automate what exists. So you need to do what is normally called re-engineering. So which involves a deep involvement of all of administration at all levels, including at the panchayat level and the mandal panchayat level. Who is going to enter this data, and how is he going to evaluate a project? How is he going to evaluate the progress in a project? And how is he going to differentiate between, let us say, desilting something which is a soft soil and something which is a rocky area? The two are very different. So all these nitty-gritty have to be configured into your system. So it's a co-developed system. It's not something which a software company or a software consultant just comes up with. So it's as he said earlier, how the railways were involved in it and what complexities are there. And there is also other reason that once you do something successfully in India, okay, you can do anything in the world.
Okay, I'll stop here. Is that so? Not so. Let me ask Dinesh. Dinesh, I mentioned this whole land records in Karnataka, but would you go along with the view that even though there are success stories, where we perhaps not done that well is in replicating those success stories in different parts of the country, even in different geographical areas where social and economic conditions are more or less the same. Yeah.
A few years back, a survey was done of all kind of ICT or e-governance projects going on in the country, and that time the count was around 300 or so. And they were all running at individual places, like Bhumi is running in a whole of Karnataka. There are a few projects like Friends in Kerala, all kinds of projects in AP, Tamil Nadu, in North. And it was found in that survey that only 15% of them have been successful in their objective, 35% of them partially failed. So that was the kind of an assessment of all these projects, because the problem is, for any e-governance or a citizen government interface project to succeed, we need three things, I think. First of the willingness to reform, because you are bringing in a new system. There is no point in just computerizing the existing forms and putting them on the web. That is no e-governance, or no, it's not going to solve the problem, it's only going to complicate the matter. So there should be a willingness to reform the existing system, because you are introducing a new technology, a new way of executing a transaction, so you need that willingness to reform the entire system. Without that, e-governance project cannot succeed. Second is availability of technology, and as it was mentioned that you need to develop a software, you need to have a hardware particularly designed for that project. For example, in Bhumi, they tried biometric technology for the first time on such a large scale, because you can't enter a password. The data, the land records should be available only to certain people, and their biometric data was, recorded in there, and that technology was specially developed for Bhumi project. So the availability of hardware and software and technology.
So
to execute
what are the
project.
constraints that preventing the scaling up of such projects? Where it has been successful, where it has been shown to be improving systems, eliminating corruption, making life simpler for the common man, what is preventing others from doing exactly the same? Is it this catch-all phrase that we use, political will? Is it lack of resources? Is it lack of trained personnel? Is it lack of equipment? Please, Mr. Shivanand Kanavi.
See, as far as resources is concerned, I don't think there is a constraint now, and especially with the kind of 8%, 9% growth that we have been seeing, the government should have enough resources to implement large projects. But as you said, even though it is a cliche that political will is required, it definitely plays a major role in government projects, and especially when they deal with systems where there is corruption ingrained and so on and so forth. For example, when there was in Andhra Pradesh government again, when there was tendering and procurement, government procurement, when that was put on the web, that any contractor, there is no complicated tendering process, and there is all that sort of thing. It's going to be e-auction and reverse auctions and all these types of things. When they were introduced, there was a serious campaign in certain sections of the media against it and against the political leadership and so on and so forth. So if the things get politicized immediately because there are vested interests involved.
Yeah. The media was acting on behalf of those vested interests. That's what you're suggesting.
Some sections,
sure.
Yes, because and also in many areas the media houses are controlled by various politicians as well. So there were serious sort of allegations and slander and all kinds of things going on. But in the face of all kinds of resistance like this, when the government went ahead, and there the advance was made.
Okay. Yes, please.
There is, shall I give one more example?
Yeah.
See, the other thing is the transparency that the technology has brought in has prevented any kind of excuses to be given. For example, file nahi hai, file, we cannot locate the file. These types of things.
I'm coming to that. Dinesh, you wanted to add something.
Just one point I wanted to add on your question of why it succeeds in one place and it does not succeed in another. It depends on the capacity of the machinery to manage and absorb the change in the form of new technology.
Is it machinery or the human beings
the administrative machinery and
the
of course it's a combination of the hardware, the machinery as such,
and
plus the people.
beings.
Yeah, of course.
Those machines are useless unless you have qualified people.
The states which have had very good administration, I would put most of the southern states in that category, are also leaders in good deployment of e-governance.
Okay.
That says a lot.
No, Dinesh, I want you to just talk a little bit about 2 points he made. Just as political will has become a bit of a cliche, so too this issue of vested interests. Who are these vested interests? Who are these people whose corrupt ways today have been, I should say, adversely impacted by information technology? And were they really, what really has helped in eliminating these so-called vested interests? We all know that, we are not exactly a country of sadhus and sants, so we are fairly low down in the ranking of Transparency International. But, sticking to this issue of corruption and vested interests.
No, vested interest would vary from project to project. Suppose a municipal body like MCD, NDMC or BMC or anybody wants to put up a list. There was a proposal to do that in Delhi, but it never happened. A list of all illegal constructions in Delhi or in any other city location wise. It's a simple transparency measure that any municipal body can take, but no municipal body has been able to do that because of the vested interests of councillors or MLAs or politicians or even big industries. So there are vested interests depending on project to project.
So when it comes,
I'll give an example of vested interest. In a very simple case of garbage collection in Bombay, Bombay Municipal Corporation produces thousands, the population produces thousands of tons of garbage. Now there are literally, if I am not mistaken, close to 2,000 trucks, garbage trucks which are involved in it, and a lot of them belong to private contractors. Now, despite all these systems, still you find garbage lying in all kinds of places and citizen complaints. So when it was investigated, it was found that there were many contractors who never did those steps and from the municipal corporation for that. Okay. So how are you going to track these trucks? So there was a solution which was implemented using GPS systems and all that, so obviously
positioning.
Yes, geographical positioning systems.
GPS, right? Okay.
Yeah. So that can really track the truck and which route it has taken. Okay. And so on, how much time it has spent and all.
Technology has was also proposed to do with the FCI trucks. When the
Food
trucks,
Corporation of India.
When trucks move out of FCI godowns, where they are going, you can simply track with GPS, but that never worked out.
Oh, never worked out. Why didn't it work out? Let's talk about this. Today we are talking about a unique identity for every Indian. There are all kinds of views that are being expressed on the subject. Let's talk about related issues which actually affect everybody. Issuance of certificates, birth certificates, death certificate, vehicle registration certificates, licenses, income tax records, other tax records, property tax records, property registration records. Let's go a little deeper. I want both of you to put on your thinking caps and say, what are these vested interests who are still opposing the effective implementation of information technology because their rent seeking, their corrupt practices are going to be adversely affected. We are discussing information technology. We are discussing how that digital divide can be bridged, how computers can truly impact the lives of citizens in the world's largest democracy, where 1 out of 4 people, at least 1 out of 4 people, are considered living below the poverty line. They live on the equivalent of less than $1 a day. Stay with us. We'll be back.
नारी तुम में ही तो है पर्वत की महानता, सागर की गहराई और धरा की विशालता। अबला नहीं सबला हो तुम, व्यक्तित्व की अस्मिता हो तुम। आपकी आवाज हमारी कोशिश अस्मिता, हर गुरुवार रात 10 बजे सिर्फ लोकसभा टेलीविजन पर।
Welcome back to our discussion on the impact of information technology on the lives of ordinary Indians. With me here, 2 journalists, authors, all specializing in information technology. I have Mr. Shivanand Kanavi, author of this book called Sand to Silicon, The Amazing Story of Digital Technology. And to his left is Dinesh Sharma. Dinesh Sharma is the author of The Long Revolution, published recently. It's a book about the birth and the growth of India's information technology industry. Okay, Shivanand, let's go a little bit into a little greater detail. Yeah, we all know it's that much easier to pay that electricity bill, that telephone bill. It's that much easier today to send a money order. You have a barcode on a speed post sent by the Indian Postal Department, which can actually enable you to track on the website where that envelope has moved from the time you gave it to the post office and when it has reached the person to whom it has been sent. We have that wherewithal, but it's still not impacting the lives of as large a number of people as it should be effective. It's still confined to a very narrow segment of our population. Is that correct?
Yes, but at the same time it's increasing, and increasing at a healthy rate, I would say, because even though India has had computers and software engineers for more than 50
years. In
your
book, there's a list of people who have been pioneers in science and technology. You have a long list of such names. Yes, go on, please.
Yes. So even though we have had this technology and technologists for over 50 years in India, but it's only in the last 10 to 15 years that widespread adoption of this technology is happening in our society, and particularly with respect to government. And you already mentioned what has happened in the financial sector, in the banking sector, and similar is the case. So when there is you can say what Guha Medal once called revolution of rising expectations. So we can't even imagine what was the situation just before this was done. For example, before computerized stock trading came into the picture, back in 92, 93, how were the stock exchanges operating? But today we want higher and higher transparency, and all kinds of mechanisms to prevent fraud, bring in as many new people, make it more easier, make it more accessible to even small towns and so on and so forth through VSAT and satellite technology. Otherwise, it used to be few brokers who used to control the entire stock trading. And that has happened just in less than 15 years.
Okay, so if it has actually happened in barely 15 years ago, very few of us could have imagined the way the internet would change the world today lives. But once again, Dinesh, when you look at the internet, out of 6.5 billion people on this planet, less than 2 billion have used the internet at any point of time. You look at India. You have 120 million television sets. You have barely 30 million personal computers. In the US, there's 1 computer for every 2 individuals. Here we have 3 computers for every 100 Indians. Look at mobile telephony. Yeah. Today there are 4 mobile telephones for every 10 Indians. In that sense, would you not say that there has been definitely, we have not only a long distance to go, but you have a clear divide where the use of technology and the use of computers has not really benefited as large a section of Indian society as it should have.
No, when we talk of digital technology, let's not get fixated with computers, because the concept of personal computer cannot be applied to India, because here computer is not personal. That's why this whole concept of kiosk came in, where you don't need to own a computer, but still you can get benefited by a service that is being offered through internet and the use of a computer. So I don't think we need to replicate the Western model of 1 computer, 1 child, and 1 computer, 1 home, and let's move away from that. Why? I'll tell you, because you referred to mobile phones. We have 450 mobile phones today, and the power of at least 100 million of them is as good, or it's much better than your laptop or a personal computer. So what we need is, we need applications to write on these mobile phones. It's not just for voice or texting, but we need more and more applications on mobiles rather than getting fixated with the computers.
Okay, let me return to the question that I asked Shivanand. This whole thing about records, certificates, death certificates, birth certificates, school leaving certificates, passport, vehicle registration, property registration, tax records. How quickly have we been able to move forward? Cannot something be done at this juncture to expedite the process?
Because all the systems which you referred to, we have moved very slowly. There are projects running in each of the categories, but still everything is not as one would like to have. And compare that with what is happening in RAGS, where you are issuing smart cards, where the money is getting transferred to your account. The difference is that these are all legacy systems which have been working for the past 100 years, 50 years, or even more.
Is it just simply a mindset question?
No, it is the legacy. It's very difficult to change a legacy system. It involves both mindsets, and it involves the processes which have been there in the system, like you need a signature, you need a whole lot of, an emblem, all that can be solved. Technology has a solution for everything. You can get as good birth certificate as you would normally get, a handwritten certificate. But it's a question of how do you change that legacy mindset, and how do you change those legacy processes and the system. That is the biggest challenge.
And where have we been able to be successful and meet that challenge, Shivanand? On this specific issue of coping with the past, the legacy.
I think any large system, any large system affecting a lot of people, employees as well as the citizens, is a real life exercise in change management. And whether it is something like State Bank of India, okay. Now, why I mention that? Because State Bank of India is probably the largest bank in the world in terms of number of branches,
number of employees.
Yes, and with its associate banks, it's close to 14,000 branches. And the largest banking group in the world is Citibank, and Citibank has all over the world less than 3,000 branches. So if you can connect branches, which you need to, because if you want anytime banking and anywhere banking, and not just going to a particular branch and opening
always
up those ledgers and all that, then you need to really create a single centralized database and connect all the branches to it and all the ATMs to it and so on and so forth.
Okay.
And they can be in Ladakh, they could be in the backwaters of Kerala on a boat, and so on and so forth. So if you can do that, and similarly he mentioned the railway passenger reservation system.
Okay.
And now what's happening in the India Post, and so many other, like NREGS itself with so many millions.
Would you like to talk a little bit about
being brought
telemedicine
into it.
also, Dinesh, a little bit?
Yeah, I think, see, when we talk about the application of digital technology, we need also, that's where we can bridge the digital divide. Like you have a combination of internet, put it with satellite technology and some add-on hardware on both the sides, specifically developed for a particular project, and you have a very nice telemedicine project, in the sense that you can
I believe some in Kerala have been very successful.
Kerala has been successful. They have been all at a pilot scale, So thereby you are able to solve the problem of shortage of specialists as well as doctors in rural areas and the crowds in
That's right.
major hospitals like
If a person
AIIMS.
in a remote rural area can avail of the benefit or the advice of a specialist in a large hospital in a city, I mean, you are bridging a...
Not only the first consultation, for example, somebody comes to AIIMS for a surgery, he needs to follow it up after say 15 days or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. He has to make 3-4 visits to AIIMS only for that. So surgery can be done at AIIMS, but the follow-up can be done where the person is through telemedicine. It's not just telemedicine. Again, telemedicine has undergone a whole lot of change. Now you have video conferencing facilities, you can connect with anybody to anybody. So we need again slight changes in the systems, and we can work on that, because that has been demonstrated already. For example, in Rajasthan I have seen in this Indira Gandhi Nahar area where malaria is on the rise. So, but there are very few testing labs. The samples have to travel from one place to another, and it takes 2-3 days. So now there is a technology whereby you can take the do the diagnosis there itself and convey the results, or an X-ray can be taken through a mobile phone, and the images can be transferred to the radiologist in the city. So these are all simple applications, but we need to work on them. Again, hospitals are a legacy systems. How do you change them? That is the biggest challenge.
Okay.
You cannot have a telemedicine center working on its own. It has to be integrated with the existing healthcare system.
You want to add to that?
Yeah, see, I want to add another aspect of the healthcare, that is healthcare management itself, not just telemedicine, consultation. That how do you network the hospitals, how do you create database of patients, how do you, and a classic, a positive example in that regard is the Arogya Shri scheme which the AP government came up with. Now, literally millions of people below poverty line are covered by it, and so a person who has a serious health problem, or he goes to a nearby center and shows his card and with
is able to get free treatment from specialists.
Exactly, and he is referred to, immediately he is referred, and through the system system they can find out which is the best hospital to deal with this, and where are the beds available, you know, all that sort of thing at the just using a keyboard and the mouse. And that center, they'll be able to send, instead of running around from pillar to post, you know, and paying the bill and trying to recover it and reimbursement and all that. This is just cashless transactions.
All right.
And that's a great success. So even healthcare management, you know, is a major thing.
Okay. I'm going to take one last break in this conversation. It's going to be the third and the final break. In the fourth and the final segment of our discussion, I want both of you to put your thoughts together on two issues. Can we expect information technology to bridge that digital divide, to impact the lives of ordinary citizens better, when the rest of your infrastructure is lagging woefully behind? Whether it be education, whether it be awareness of healthcare issues, whether it be the proverbial bijli sarak pani, your electricity, your water, your roads. You know, the classic question, how can you expect which comes first, the blackboard in the school or the computer in the school?
Mehta used to say we need bijli, sadak, pani and bandwidth.
All right. So let's discuss this issue, and I want to discuss one more issue with both of you. We've talked a lot about brain drain. Shivanand, your book is filled with pictures of Indians who made their mark who the world has recognized as pioneers in information technology. Can brain drain become brain gain? That is the topic that I also want to discuss with both of you. We'll take a final break in our discussion looking at information technology. People keep talking about India becoming an economic superpower. People believe that one part of India, not Bharat, but India is already an information technology superpower. But can the power of technology impact the lives of ordinary people in a more pervasive manner than it has so far? That's the key issue. We'll be back with you in a short while from now.
Hello and welcome to In Transit.
Slumdog is definitely a very important work, because given the fact that it was a far more difficult film to be able to be shot live in Bombay.
Relationships have become duty beyond duty.
Some of my photographs were published in a couple of newspapers and magazines.
Welcome back to the fourth and final segment of our discussion on how information technology can impact the lives of ordinary Indians. With me here in the studio of Lok Sabha Television, I have Shivanand Kanavi. He is Vice President of Tata Consultancy Services, and Dinesh Sharma, Science Editor, Mail Today. Shivanand, IT can't work in isolation. Divang Mehta used to say we need bijli, sarak, pani and bandwidth. You ask the education department if they have money, will they first spend it on a blackboard or will they first spend it on a computer? How can information technology impact the lives of people who are still struggling the basic necessities? Your roti kapra makan, that section of our population, and they comprise at least a fourth of our population. At least about 300 odd million in the world's second most populous country are today concerned first and foremost about roti kapra makan before anything else. Yes.
Yeah. See, with all this technology, we are still trying to provide services and include, let us say, 200 to 300 million people of our population, and that itself.
That is what inclusive economic development is supposed to be all about.
Exactly. So, and technology is helping in including these, breaking the silos, you know, and letting services flow from the government to the citizens, as well as creating some sort of cooperative networks and so on and so forth among these 200 to 300 million people, and that itself is a huge challenge, because 300 million is the entire population of United States. Now this will not address this technology by itself. How you are going to bring in the rest of the 700 million or 800 million people into this network, and that really requires, that's why you are going to see chunky growth, that is certain sectors will advance fast despite the fact that the roads are bad. Telecom is a classic example. Nobody envisaged that in the last 10 years, nobody envisaged that 500 million mobile phones will be there in India, and today we have them. And all kinds of people are using it.
I mean, it's truly amazing when you look back, when India became politically independent, there were 2 phones for every 10,000 Indians. Today there are more than 4 phones for every 10 Indians.
That's right.
Or you can say, put it differently and say, out of every, 5 Indians, 2 have phones.
Yeah, and if that figure 450 to 500 million is correct, that is almost half the population of India.
Right.
And these are not phones; these are subscriptions. These are not just multiple number of instruments hanging around. But so that has obviously advanced, despite the fact that the roads and education, as you said, social sector is lagging behind, and so on and so forth. So that is a much deeper question. I don't think information technology can address that. Information technology can help in managing certain things. For example, I remember a well-known politician asking around in 2000 or 2001, "Yeah, IT kya hai?"
He thought it was income tax all along, right?
No, he said IT say, if there is a drought, how is IT going to bring rain, and so on and so forth. The IT can help you in drought management or relief management. It cannot bring rain. It cannot improve agriculture in that sense.
Okay.
So it's information technology. So it deals with information.
Your comments, Dinesh?
Yeah, I feel the growth we have achieved so far is lopsided. We have been talking about the 4 in just 2-3 metros.
That's correct.
So the growth
when
is
you
still
look at Delhi and
lopsided,
Mumbai, 8 out of 10 people in Delhi have a mobile phone.
So,
but you go to a village and be 8 out of 100 people. If
So,
you travel 200 kilometers away from Delhi or Mumbai.
So I would say this growth is still lopsided. Still there are, I don't have the exact figure as of now, but there are at least several thousand villages in India without a village telephone at all.
Let me give you that figure. It's over 10,000. It's closer to 15,000 if I'm not mistaken.
So we are still...
And most of them are in remote areas where they don't even have what is called a VPT, a village public phone.
So there is a certain obligation. We have that USO fund which has been created, and
people are unhappy that the fund hasn't been spent as well as it should have.
So the government is still, to do its part. All the money is coming from the private operator. So the growth is lopsided, whether it is mobile telephony, whether it is the services which are reaching out to the people. For example, Bhumi is useless for a landless labor. What record is going to find? So in a way, of course, it has touched the lives of several millions of people, but still there are a lot of people which are not included in this whole sphere.
So tell me, how do we change this situation? How do we change the situation that it's not just a computer, as you rightly pointed out. It's not even a mobile telephone, but that technology in its widest possible forms and manifestations and applications can actually impact your life.
So we need to look at innovative approaches or innovative applications or different forms of technology which are available.
Would you like to give some examples?
One example I gave was of the healthcare sector. If there is a phone with the ASHA, the village level health worker, she can collect all that data, and the data can travel faster to the nearest healthcare center, and the help can reach to the village. So there are applications like that. For example, you don't need to send your soil for testing to an agriculture center in a district. There are sensors which you can put in the soil. They don't cost much, and the data can be transported through the mobile telephony. So then you know that how much of fertilizer you have to apply. So there are applications like that which are not very costly.
And there's going to be a new generation of people, of Indians, a class of Indians who are going to be utilizing the internet on the mobile phone. Are we going to see that with third generation spectrum and technology coming? We're all waiting for that to happen. So, I mean, will this all be more than just a plaything of the rich and the powerful, but something that impacts the lives of ordinary people?
I think yes, broadband is what is really going to make much more, the content, rich content to reach people, and that there is no way that landlines, cables are going to provide that, the rate at which those connections are going. So it has to come wirelessly. So any new development, whether it is 3G, whether it is WiMAX, whether it is 4G, all these new technologies that are coming, whichever proves affordable and replicable on a large scale and so on and so forth, is going to make a big difference.
Okay.
Now, one other example I wanted to give you of technology which can affect, which can include the people who are not yet in this 300 million. Is a thing which was developed with a lot of inputs from linguists, from psychologists and computer scientists, to what was called a computer-based functional literacy module, which uses discarded computers, which doesn't need high-powered computers, and within 40 hours it can teach an adult illiterate enough to help their children in homework. And people who could not read and write, and especially who could not read, have been able to read newspapers and help children in their homework. But the thing is to replicate it. And the estimate is that within next 5 years, we could literally make entire India functionally literate rather than 30 years.
No, people say that when you don't have electricity in the villages, how people are going to use computers. So there are pedal-powered computers. So what I'm saying is there are, innovations exist. We need to.
All right.
Just
I want both of you to comment on one issue which is of considerable lot of people. We used to complain about the brain drain, and all the NRIs who once they left the shores of India suddenly became very patriotic, and they would say, no, they left India because our brain was in the drain. And therefore now the buzzword is brain gain.
Or brain circulation, what they
That's
call
correct. Shivanand, in your book you've shown these pictures of Amar Bose to Sam Pitroda, Arun Netrawali, literally, dozens of eminent Indians, persons of Indian origin, who've contributed so much for the development of information technology the world over. Are we seeing a situation where slowly but surely they're looking homewards all over again?
Yeah, that I think is bound to happen and has already happened in the last 15-20 years. And there has been a great amount of interaction between Indians who are abroad and Indians working in India, especially regarding digital technology and information technology and so on. Because fundamentally what we have to see is these are not the days of Thomas Alva Edison, where one guy could sit in a lab, or Graham Bell, who could develop a new technology. Now technology, any new technology grows through networks of thousands of people all over the world. So you can't even call it Indian technology or American technology or Chinese technology. People have to collaborate. And that is the reason that you have so many companies with their front ends in Silicon Valley and with their R&D and their development work being done in India. And similarly, there are Indian companies which are making use of the research being done elsewhere, whether it is pharmaceutical industry or whether it is digital technology industry, information technology industry, and so on and so forth. So today, it is these changes in the world that have actually led to this kind of a circulating idea and what Tom Friedman called the flat world and so on and so forth, at least in this field.
that too today, while wondering if the world is really flat. Dinesh, we live in a highly unequal world. Let's accept it. America is less than 5% of the world's population. It consumes a quarter of the world's resources. North America, Western Europe and Japan put together have 15% of the world's population, but they use up about more than 3/4 of the world's resources. India and China together have 40% of the world's population, but we contribute less than 10% of the world GDP, 8%. Are we seeing the world really becoming flat? Or was Mr. Thomas Friedman indulging in hyperbole? Let me put it very politely.
No, he was looking at the way technology has flattened the delivery of services. Like you buy a McDonald's burger in Los Angeles, but the back processing is taking place in Egypt or somewhere else. In that context, or your banking calls are being answered. So in that sense, he gave that idiom of the world getting flat. But
okay,
actually,
the question I'm asking
the
is,
inequities do
are we
exist.
really
There's
going to
no-
be the nation of cyber coolies, or are we knowledge workers? I'm again using exaggerated phrases to make a point. I mean, is our comparative advantage the fact you have to pay a worker in India less than you have to pay in America?
Yeah, see, we
Body
have,
shopping, you call
there's
it.
no doubt that we have talent, we have knowledge, a base of knowledge workers, and all the large corporations, including some big companies like TCS,
Like
and
TCS, to
elsewhere,
which
they are also
Mr. Shivanand
multinationals, they
Kanavi
operate in
belongs.
several companies. So all big companies in the world are seeking talent, seeking knowledge workers. So, and wherever that knowledge worker or the talent comes, it gives them comparative labor advantage, people will go. That's, in that sense, it's a flat world, if you would like to say. So we have an advantage of numbers, but still we are able to, we need to see how that can add to the economic growth of our own country.
Okay.
Let me add
We
one
have
word
run
to
out
that.
of time. One word.
Yeah, one word to that. For example, in the world of knowledge, in the world of technology, I think the world has become flat.
All right.
Okay, not in other aspects. Not
right.
if you are comparing farmers in Tanjavur with
Yeah.
farmers in California or in Manitoba. No. But Satyen Bose had to write a letter to Einstein, wait months together for a reply to come back. That is not necessary
Today
now.
that email would reach him
Exactly.
in no time at
Yeah,
all.
exactly.
Okay, thank you so much, Shivanand Kanavi, for coming here to the studio, giving us your views. Dinesh, thank you very much for coming here. The world may or may not be flat. It might be flat depending on perspective. But the consensus among our experts here is that information technology has done a lot to change the lives of ordinary Indians. But surely it can do much, much more. Thank you very much for being with us on this program.